When I was a teenager, I remember attending a manners dinner at my church youth group where we learned about what to do with our napkins, how to set a table, how to use the silverware from the outside in, and how to walk gracefully. We even practiced walking with books on our heads and learned how to stand up elegantly from a chair. Engage those thigh muscles, ladies. You know, the kind of etiquette socialites would learn at a finishing school. Manners that may be nice in some circles, but that are not super relevant to day-to-day modern life. That's where today's guest, Brooke Romney, comes in. She's written a series of books about modern manners for teens and kids, with manners like
The Way You Smell Matters, Pitch In, Read the Room, Don't Put Down What Others Love, Don't Talk About Bodies, and Celebrate Others.
This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. Welcome back to the How She Moms podcast. I'm so excited to be starting back up again after a long recovery break from my rock climbing accident. If that's news to you, you can listen to my episode about it, How She Falls Off a Cliff. Today we get to talk to Brooke Romney, the author of 3 flip books about modern manners, 2 for teens and 1 for kids, each with 1 manner a week that kids can use to develop their social skills. They're called, appropriately, 52 Modern Manners for Today's Teens, Volumes 1 and 2, and 52 Modern Manners for Kids. I use these books myself with my kids, and I love them so much that I've given several away as gifts. So it was fun to talk to Brooke about them in person. We'll discuss this idea of manners and what that even means these days, and how we can teach our kids social skills that will help them connect with other people and become more confident. But first, a few How She Moms updates. While I've been away recovering, I've put lots of thought into what I want How She Moms to look like going forward, and part of that is that I'd like to feel more connected to you. Podcasting can actually be kind of lonely because I never actually know who's listening, but I'd love to meet you and get to know you. So I'm going to try something wild and crazy and host an open house style How She Moms hangout on the first Friday of February the 2nd from 1 to 2 Mountain Standard Time, with wiggle room to go until 3 if we're having fun. No need to be on time, just pop in whenever. I'll just be there with my camera on. This will be a chance to meet each other, talk about what experiments you're trying in your homes, and maybe share some I'm trying in mine, and then talk about some of the episodes I'm researching right now, specifically one about family meetings, one about body image, and one about teaching kids hygiene and grooming skills. If you have ideas to share about any of those topics or other topics you think I should cover, we could even record your ideas right there during the hangout for use in a future podcast episode, or we could schedule another time to talk. If it's fun, we'll do it again. I'll send out the link for the hangout in a monthly newsletter that will go out the last Friday of January. So all you have to do is sign up for my newsletter at howshemoms.com and then look for that newsletter in your inbox. The newsletter itself is new too. Each month I'll share what topics I'm researching for upcoming episodes, what I'm reading or listening to, and what experiments I'm trying in my own home. Then I'll share a family activity or experiment that you can try. When you sign up, you'll also get a free PDF of my self-evaluation chart that your kids can use to gauge how well they take care of themselves, whether they're a helper, worker, or manager in areas from getting up in the morning to cleaning up after themselves to learning new things to getting exercise. Okay, back to Brooke Romney. Brooke and I actually met up the very day before my rock climbing accident this summer at her local library while I was on vacation in Utah. You'll have to excuse the echo in the room we were in, but I couldn't pass up the chance to talk to her in person. It's so much more fun that way. The first thing I wanted to talk to Brooke about was just this idea of teaching our kids manners. It's a word that kind of brings to mind stodgy, old-fashioned, maybe even arbitrary rules from starched aunties or strict schoolmasters. Good old Webster defines manners as social conduct or rules of conduct as shown in the prevalent customs. Again, sounds pretty stodgy and regimental. I like Brooke's definition better, partly because of her ultimate goal when it comes to manners.
These are strategies to help you create a successful life with successful relationships. And sometimes when people read the title, they may think, which fork to use. And while those can be important in certain situations, that's not what I think is most important, because I think connected teenagers who feel good about themselves end up leading really successful lives with a lot of self-confidence. And so that was the point of these books.
For Brooke, matters are more about social skills, showing interest in other people and being considerate, not just about conforming to an arbitrary set of rules. For example, one of the manners in the first volume of 52 Manners for Today's Teens is pitch in. The explanation says, If food is being prepared or an area is being cleaned, ask what you can do to help. Even better, just pitch in and fill a need. A few minutes of help go a long way.
If you've read the Manor Pitch In and you're the kid who has started pitching in, I will 100% guarantee you that people are noticing that. And adults are saying, thanks so much for staying after to clean up the chairs. They're calling the mom and saying, we took your son camping and he was so amazing to clean up everything and help load the car. You'll find a teacher that says, they're so considerate. They never leave the room without pushing in their chair. That's really great. And all of a sudden, this kid who maybe isn't great at everything is like, hey, people think I'm pretty great. People like having me around. People want me to come with their family places. And that gives a kid, especially one who's struggling a little bit, a lot of confidence in who they actually are, not just what they do.
Yeah. Some of my other favorite manners from the book are take ownership of your mistakes, be inclusive, speak with confidence, practice boredom, share the last one, be trustworthy, and be present. There's just so many good ones. As we started talking, I asked Brooke about the modern part of modern manners. Are the rules different than when we were kids? Why did she feel like there was a need for these books?
So I think what has changed most of all is when we were kids, we spent a lot of time observing our parents and observing the world around us. Unless you brought a book with you, your only option was to sit and watch and listen. You know, there really wasn't a way to zone out or do what you wanted to do. Our kids, because of screens and AirPods, have missed out on a lot of observation. And I think a lot of times they hit those teenage years and all of a sudden they're supposed to know what to do, but they haven't really observed it.
Yeah.
I also think that we used to live in a more community-based world where we were interacting a lot more in person with each other. And our kids have lived in more of a virtual world, more of a private world where people try to avoid, interacting. Maybe, you're not all at the doctor together. You're not having to go to the post office to pick things up. So there's just less opportunities to see social interactions, whether they're close interactions or acquaintance interactions. And so them being taught how to do it well, I think is really still important.
Yeah. There's so many things that we do that we put so much effort and money into, sports and extracurriculars and tutors and whatever else. And I keep feeling like the best way we can set them up for the success and set them apart from their peers when they're trying to get jobs and when they're trying to make it in the world. The social component is what nobody's really teaching, and I think it's the biggest piece.
Well, there was just an article that was published in the Wall Street Journal about how at some top accounting firms, they are literally teaching them how to have a conversation.
Oh my gosh.
Like these are bright, brilliant people that have just graduated from college that are offered jobs at these top accounting firms, and they are literally going back to, this is how you meet someone. You cannot wear jeans to this event. You can't talk down to someone that you're working with. I mean, very, very, very basic things that you would think especially bright people would understand.
Yeah.
And doors open to people who understand how to have relationships and how to communicate and how to connect. And the article was actually mind-blowing to me and reminded me of how important this is that we teach our kids these manners in our home. The other side to that, when I started talking about these things online, someone sent me a message and said, these were all the things I learned at a very expensive private boarding school on the East Coast. And I feel so strongly that everyone should have access to the things, to those small, nuanced manners that help people get in the door, that help people connect, make connections. Yeah. We all know that most people get jobs through a connection, not through an online resume submission.
Yeah.
And then you really solidify a job by being great at an interview and being someone that someone else looks at and says, I would want to work with you. Yeah. And it's not about, being slick or, how good you look or how much money you came from. These are things that you can learn. The book is $20. You can learn this for $20 And that was so important to me, that you don't have to go to a private boarding school. You don't have to be a well-connected family in order to have options for opportunity.
Well, and I think that depends on how you define success. And I like that when you're talking about success, it isn't like monetary, it's relationships, really.
Absolutely. And just having the options. Like for me, it's open doors. That's whether you're going into teaching, where you're, going to cap out at a salary that nobody's going to say like, wow about, or whether you want to be a diplomat. Either way, you're living a successful life and you have options and open doors. And that is something that I think is so crucial for our kids to be able to say, yeah, like I have option A, B, C, and D because I know how to connect. I know how to act. I've spent my whole life being someone that's useful, right? Because I'm someone that's aware. I'm someone that's respectful. Like those things are really important.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some of the specific manners.
Great.
What are some of your favorites or crowd pleasers, I guess?
From the first book, I would say The Way You Smell Matters is probably one of the tops, because I think as parents, we want to teach our kids about hygiene, and their hygiene affects us and those around them. And it also can be a source of contention and make them feel like you think they smell, you think they don't take care of, it can get personal. Mm-hmm. And this manner has been really great to remind your kids that it's not personal, that it's every teen smells and every teen has to take care of their body. So that one has been a really big crowd pleaser. Another one that has probably been one that's really tender for me and a lot of other people is the Find New Friends manner. And it talks about no friend is perfect.
Right.
But if your friends are consistently treating you poorly, if they are consistently leaving you out, if they are consistently making you feel like garbage, all friends do those things every once in a while. But if it's a consistent thing, then it's time to look for new friends. And I have had the sweetest conversations in both DMs and personally.
Wow.
From moms who have read that manner to their family and who have had a child come to them later and say, I think I need to find new friends. And in tears and telling them about situations that they maybe wouldn't have told them about before. And then they've gone and found the friends that they needed to have. And that's probably my favorite experience that I've heard of, is because it's literally changed their life experience, because they were told that it's okay to find new friends and that it's okay to sometimes be alone. They were willing to open up to their mom or to their dad about what was going on. And I love that one, because one of the things I think that can be really devastating to teens is when they try to belong where no one wants them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which level they're trying to belong at, but whichever one that is where people don't want them, that can really hurt you in the short term and the long term. So those are two of my favorites from volume 1. Two of my favorites from volume 2, I love the manner Celebrate Others. I think it is such an important thing for us to learn early on. I think it can truly change our life and the way we see our relationships. And it just talks about it's okay if someone else does well. It's okay if someone else wins. Our job is to celebrate them. And two things can be true. You can feel bummed for yourself, and you can also feel excited for a friend. I love that manner. Another one that is very, very popular is Read the Room.
And such a skill.
It's a skill worth working on and understanding. And this one says, if your friend did not make the basketball team and you did, it is probably not the appropriate time to talk about how fun the season is going to be, right? There's other people to talk about that with. If your sister is being lectured about not turning her homework in, it is not the appropriate time to bring up the fact that you have gotten A's every term since you started high school, right? If your mom is complaining about how hard it is to get dinner on the table and, she's sorry that it's just quesadillas again, it is not the appropriate time to tell your mom that your friend always gets steak, potatoes, salad, fruit for every meal, right? Like those are just things, and that's really important to learn. And it's what I love is in a lot of families, it's become just a quiet little thing that they can say. Instead of being rude, they can just say, remember to read the room. if it's not going well. So those are a couple really impactful manners that I think families have loved.
Yeah, no, that's so great. You've talked a little bit about some of the ways to use this, but I'm just curious how you've used it in your own house and how you've brought up these conversations. Well, and I guess just what your kids thought when they saw that you were writing a book about manners.
So we do like the one a week and just flip it over. I like to have my 11-year-old read it out loud, and then we try to discuss depending on who's home. I am a huge proponent. I think there is a golden age for learning about these things.
Okay.
And I would say it's between the ages of 10 and 13.
Okay.
They are so receptive and they're so excited about being teenagers and they want to know how to do it well. It's a really awesome age where they still believe things that their parents say. That's how we do it at our house. My kids, they're teenage boys, so they roll their eyes and say the things, but I do think that they are overall really grateful. One of my kids said he was taking a girl out on a date and he went up to the door and her parents were there and he talked to her parents and had just a conversation with them and was polite. And one of the manners in there is acknowledge adults, and he did that and took her out. And after the date, the girl that he took out was like, "Oh my gosh, my parents love you." And he told me, he's like, "Wow, Mom, the bar is really low."
Yeah.
I didn't even do anything that was that big. I went to the door, I said hello, I had a short conversation, and that made them love me. And I think that they are seeing what using these manners can do for them.
Yeah.
We know that teenagers are inherently self-centered. It's part of their growing up process. The world does revolve around them. And so as they see these manners working in their lives for their benefit, it's something that I see them more interested in and willing to do. There's some that they roll their eyes about, but I have seen them use them less in our home and much more with other people.
Right.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
And that's okay.
That's how it works with so many things.
Right. So that's how we use them in our own house. One of the things that I think is really important, at least for me, is that we now have common language on what we're talking about.
Oh, that's good.
So we are able to say, one of the manners in volume 2 is don't put down what others love. And so it's really easy for me to say, hey, when we were in the car and you were telling your friend how the sport he's playing is your worst sport ever and you don't know why anyone would play it. That's putting down what someone else loves. There's a different way to have that conversation. You don't have to like everything that someone else likes.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be a jerk about it, right? Those are two different things. It's not about being a pleaser and saying, "Oh, you love baseball? Me too. It's my favorite sport. I love it," if you don't. But you can also say something instead. One of the suggestions is ask them what they like about it. "Oh, really? You love baseball? What do you love about it?" That feels very different than being a jerk.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I can tell that was a very deliberate part of your design, is that first there's a catchy, quick saying or synopsis.
Right. It's a quick manner, something that we can all rally around. We all know what we're talking about, whether it's celebrate others, don't put down what others love, don't talk about bodies, whatever it is, we have that common language.
Right. So you get straight to the point, and then right under it, you explain what you mean, but then you can flip to the other side and you get examples of the words to use, the vocabulary, and you can take it at any level.
Yes.
But the big one is a memorable, catchy thing, and they stick. And I think that's one of the things I love most about it.
Yeah, I really like that there's, 3 levels to take it in and however much your kids are open for. But on the back, I really think it's important to have a why. And there's a why and there's a what's in it for me and a how, So there's the manner, there's the how, and then the why and what's in it for me. And those were really important. You can tell that I have some hard sells in some of my children. And so I really tried to, take someone who was very skeptical and how could I help them buy in?
Yeah. My sister-in-law has your book for teens. So I asked her what she wanted me to ask you when I talked to you, and she wanted to know what advice you have for tweens and how do you navigate that kind of awkward in between. They want to still play with the kids, but they also want to be a teen or an adult,
Well, I have a couple things. My first one that I feel like I wasn't good about as an early parent, kids don't have to grow up as fast as we think they need to grow up. There seems to be like almost like this reward for the kids who seem like especially mature.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned is helping our tweens hold on to those
Yes.
younger years, to those playful ways of existing. There is no race to be a grown-up. And if your kid is immature in middle school and does not mature until high school, it is totally fine and they will be just great. And it is not a big deal. So
Yeah.
there's certain ways that we can help them mature, like through these manners, being socially appropriate. Those are important things. But let them be little.
Yeah.
Like let them just enjoy their childhood for as long as they can, because they will grow up. Everyone does.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I would give advice to tweens. And then the other, I talked about this a little bit, but like really capitalize. These are golden years for our kids to feel both connected to us and also working through growing up. Kind of by the time they hit like 14, 15, kind of depends on the kid, but they like think they know a lot.
Yeah.
And so really capitalizing on creating connections with them, on praising those things that they do really well. My 11-year-old is very, very helpful. And as I look back, I'm like, oh, all of my 11-year-olds were actually very helpful. So really praising that, using these opportunities to connect. They usually still really like their parents during these years. So I like to say, like, invest in your relationship with them so that when they are 14, 15, 16, it kind of depends, and they like don't think you're as great as they used to, that you have a lot of times and experiences and connection to draw on when maybe things are a little more rocky.
Yeah, and I appreciated your suggestion. Yeah, they're cognitively able to jump to the teen book.
Yeah,
at that age. Mm-hmm. They don't need a separate tween book, because I don't know any tweens who like the term tween.
Right. I know it's not a very good term. It's not a very good term.
Right. And they don't like to be set apart, and but if you kind of graduate them, because they can understand the concepts. They may not be able to practice it yet.
Yeah.
But if it's in there, when that situation comes up, they have something to draw from.
Yes. And if you start those, that book at 11, and then you go to volume 2 when they're 12, and then you go back to volume 1 when they're 13, you kind of cycle through these, and those are reminders. I mean, I wrote the books, and often when I slip to a manner, I'm like, oh yeah, like oops. I need to work on that one. I'm not doing my job with that. And it's just a good reminder for me every time we flip the page too. None of us are going to be perfect in any of these manners.
Yeah.
And it's just reminders to be a little bit better.
Yeah. And I like what you mentioned earlier also about using personal examples, like, oh man, I'm working on this. This happened last week, and whoa, I wish we would have flipped this book earlier,
Absolutely. Yep. It's always great for our teens to understand that we are also imperfect. We are also trying. We're sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding. I think it's really important for our kids to know that you're human, and not just that they know we're human, but they know they'll continue to be human after they turn 18, after they get married. Like, it's just a part of the growing process.
Yeah. And that is such a lovely way to leave this episode, remembering that this book applies to us too. After all, we know the most important way to teach our kids manners is by example. So it doesn't hurt to have this book out on our counter to brush up on our own manners. So until next episode, mind your manners. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. Tune in 2 weeks to hear from Dr. Mary Wild, a pediatrician and mother of 8 boys, about how she helps kids manage anxiety. It's going to be a good one. And if you liked this conversation with Brooke, you'll enjoy her other episode, How Brooke Romney Learns from Other Moms, which you can find in the show notes. You can now find the full catalog of How She Moms episodes plus video shorts on YouTube, in addition to wherever else you get your podcasts. I also hang out on Instagram at How She Moms. Special thanks to Susan Singley, my own mom, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, so for me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.